Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of the Oklahoma Aerospace Aeronautics Commission, May 29, 2024. The meeting notice was posted according to the requirements of the Open Meeting Act. This meeting will come to order. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Seth Phillips.
Here.
Commissioner Kevin Potter.
Here.
Chairman Charles Ortega.
Here.
Commissioner Lindy Ritz.
Here.
Commissioner Blake Rainey.
Here.
Commissioner Jim Putnam.
Here.
Commissioner Jerry Hunter.
Here.
We have a quorum. First order of business is the approval of minutes for the January 30, 2024 Commission meeting. The copy of the minutes have been sent to the members, and the copy is in your meeting packet. Are there any corrections to the minutes as distributed? If there are no questions, I'll accept the motion.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
I have a motion to approve in a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Potter.
Aye.
Chairman Ortega.
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz.
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam.
Abstain.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Commissioner Phillips.
Aye.
And Commissioner Rainey.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Next order of business is approval of the minutes for the March 6, 2024 Commission meeting. A copy has been sent to the members, and the copy is in your meeting packet. Are there any questions on the minutes as distributed? If there are no questions, I'll accept the motion.
I move for approval.
Second.
Okay, have a motion to approve in a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Phillips.
Aye.
Commissioner Potter.
Abstain.
Chairman Ortega.
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz.
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey.
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam.
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Okay, item number 4. We'll have a financial report. Mr. Wadsworth.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Starting out with the financial summary document, this will be as of the end of April. The department had an ending cash balance of $27.2 million, with encumbrances totaling $19 million. Estimated statutory remaining for the remainder of FY24, which does end in the end of June, is $2.2 million, and outstanding reimbursements owed to the agency total about $1 million. The total amount of remaining expenditures that could be incurred this fiscal year totals $9.7 million, with the bulk of that being in the airport construction program. This leaves us with an expected available cash balance after encumbrances and expected income of $1.8 million. And the total fiscal year-to-date expenditures are $6.6 million as of the end of April. Moving on to revenue. Total statutory revenue collected for February was $587,000. March totaled $1.1 million, and the total for April was $202,000. Total statutory revenue collected through April of the fiscal year was $8.7 million, which compares to $8.9 million for last year, so we are down about 2%. And that is primarily due to lower aircraft registration fees. Year over year, those are down about $40,000. Part of that is due, last year we had some that registered late and had to pay some extra fines and penalties, so that kind of inflated that number a little bit last year. Excise tax year to year is almost identical as of the end of April. So, and on the 3-year average revenue document, you'll see that our revenue collected from statutory revenue is currently about $2.7 million more than the 3-year average. As I mentioned previously, that 3-year average is really kind of brought down from the first year of that, which was still coming out of COVID. So I think next year we'll see that take up quite a bit once we adjust that 3-year period. With that, happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Item number 6, I'm sorry, item number 5, legislative, congressional, and regulatory update. Director Arties.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Commissioners. Hope everybody is enjoying the morning here on this end of May Wednesday. Here to report on the congressional and regulatory activities. I think most of you have seen Congress has passed and the President has signed a long-term FAA reauthorization, 5-year reauthorization. That is an excellent thing. We've been debating that we the country have been debating that for the last 18 to 24 months, depending on whose clock you're looking at, and we've had a couple of continuing resolutions that we had to get through to get to this point, but the House and the Senate finally agreed, and I will send you kind of a summary sheet that a couple of different trade organizations have put together to talk about the various pros and cons of what was included and not included, but some of the highlights are moving the AIP program, which is where our airports get their grants, to $4 billion a year. It's currently at 3.35. It is also increasing the slice of the pie that is going to general aviation airports from 20% to 25%. Obviously, that was a big deal for us in Oklahoma because that impacts not just our GA, but also positively our small commercial airports as well. And so we're certainly excited to see that. They have made a few minor reforms to some of the commercial airline pilot, or what we commonly refer to as the 1,500-hour rule issue, which we know had been what was really holding up the FAA reauthorization for a long, long time, the debate amongst the 1,500-hour rule and the raising of the pilot retirement from 65 to 67. That, however, did not, that they made some minor tweaks to that. They didn't increase the age. On the educational front, we're very excited that the grants that we received 2.5 years ago from the FAA for the 625 Workforce Development Program, the cap on those went from $500,000 to $1 million. So if we're ever interested in participating in that program again, obviously more funding opportunities there for on the educational front. I've talked to most all of our UAS, AAM, and drone friends around the state and around the country, and by and large, the synopsis of the language that was included in the reauthorization was very positive for the drone industry, helping move forward the integration and the enablement of that to better and more safely bring that technology and those incoming technologies in line with a safe airspace case use with traditional aircraft and traditional aviation. And so by and large, we're very excited about this prospect. Of course, with the authorization, next year would come appropriations and ensuring that the appropriators plug in the money to go with what the authorizers have done in this reauthorization. But this allows us stability and some success for the country, for the world's safest air transportation system. Having a long-term reauthorization is very important, as Commissioner Ritz very well knows from her time with the FAA. So moving on from federal government issues to state government issues, we are in the last week of regular session. Sine Die is coming up on Friday. You've probably seen the news that there was a budget agreement made, and of course those budget bills are working their way through the process this last week of session. But I'm glad to report, and I'll let Sandra do most of the talking here, that we're batting 1,000 this year on policy issues for aviation legislation. And so just a commending to her, to the staff, and to you all for all the help that we have had as an agency leading the way, leading the charge on aerospace and aviation legislation at the state capitol. And I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to the legislators that carried legislation, that helped us move legislation forward, even if it wasn't their primary bill. We wouldn't be able to do this without each one of you. So that being said, Sandra, I'm going to turn it over to you for the nitty-gritty details.
Quick question.
Oh, yes, sir.
The 1,500-hour rule for the airline, it did not get changed?
So there were some additional credits for simulator time and some other activities, but the 1,500-hour rule did not lower, as there had been some debate about trying to either remove the 1,500-hour limit or change it in its entirety. They've allowed FAA to go and look at doing some additional simulator time and some additional credits for other kinds of training. But yes, that was kind of the 1,500-hour rule and the 65 to 67 were the two major stumbling blocks that had yet to be solved, and I think they candidly mostly kicked that can down the road for another 5 years.
5 years. Okay.
Any other questions before I depart the podium and turn it over to Sandra? No? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Good morning, Commissioners. 7 initiatives were presented to the legislature with a 100% completion rate this year. Senators filed 841 Senate bills and 13 Senate joint resolutions. 1,210 House bills were filed, 1 House concurrent resolution, and 12 House joint resolutions. According to Article 5 of Section 26 of the Oklahoma Constitution, regular sessions of the legislature shall be adjourned sine die no later than 5 o'clock on the last Friday in May of each year. That is this Friday, May 31st, at 5 p.m. So the legislature is working diligently late hours to complete their work. Our legislative initiatives that you approved during our commission meeting last fall have come to full circle, and so I'm just going to go over those with you, and they're listed here. The first slide that you're looking at is the legislation that originated in the House of Representatives. House Bill 3430 renamed Title III of the Oklahoma statutes to Aerospace, Aircraft, and Aviation Infrastructure to align the reflection of the agency name change. That was authored by Senator Pugh and Nick Archer of Western Oklahoma. House Bill 3672 defines VTOL aircraft vertiports, creates a framework to guide development of vertiports for unmanned aircraft systems and advanced air mobility, and that was by Representative Miller and Senator John Haste. House Bill 4072 was the Aerospace Engineer Tax Credit that we have been working on with the Oklahoma Tax Commission for 2 years, which redefined qualified employers not exceeding a claim of the credit of more than 5 total tax years in their lifetime. So we do believe that we have resolved this. Boeing Corporation and some other aerospace entities were helping us with that. Chairman Wallace filed the bill on behalf of Representative Miller, though she carried the bill, and Senator John Haste. House Bill 4072 was we just did that. Senate Bill, next slide, there we go. Senate Bill 1294 authorized the establishment of the 501c3 Oklahoma Aerospace Foundation for Education and Industry Outreach, and that was by Senator Rosino and Representative Nicole Miller, and Chris and Director Arties are working on getting that established. Senate Bill 1372 created the Oklahoma Aircraft Engine Testing Development Grant Program within ODAA to offer financial assistance to private or public entities to expand aircraft engine testing capabilities and infrastructure. That was by Senator John Haste and Speaker Pro Tem Hilbert. This bill was not signed by the governor. It laid on the governor's desk and went into law. The other bills were signed by the governor that I just mentioned. I'd be happy to elaborate on that at the end if you have questions. Senate Bill 1393 created the Long-Term Aerospace and Aeronautics Infrastructure Sustainability Revolving Fund for appropriations designated for the purpose of construction, maintenance, and other capital projects. This is probably the most critical bill that we passed this session because this allows us to complete our infrastructure projects if we have to go beyond the 30 months required for appropriations, and Chris can answer any questions regarding that, or Director Arties. That was by Senator Haste and Representative Miller. Senate Bill 1912. They liked the unmanned bill so much they passed it twice and the governor signed it twice. So this is Senate Bill 1912, which is the companion bill to the House bill that went through, and it was also signed by the governor. Just for candidate filings and kind of what's going on at the legislature, and all 285 candidates filed for all legislative, statewide, and congressional offices in Oklahoma. And after the 3-day legislative filing period, which opened on Aero Day, by the way, April 5th, and ended at 5 p.m. that Friday, 44 House members seeking a re-election did not draw an opponent. Of the 20 state Senate races heading to competition, 5 senators were re-elected by default, and 1 seat was decided by 1 candidate filing in District 9 in Muskogee. The Senate Republican Caucus designated Senator Greg McCourtney for the 2025 Senate Pro Tem position, and Kyle Hilbert was the designee for Speaker of the House. The primary election is June 18th, and I yield for questions.
Any questions?
I have a question about the grants for jet engines and test cells.
Yes, sir. So you might recall that we did this bill last year in 2023, and it went through the process, and then there was a problem at the end. And so Senator Hayes just decided to refile the bill. And Director Artis can cover this in any remarks that he has regarding the appropriations. But there was an appropriation made to the grant program, so we will have to write rules and develop that program.
Did you need more clarification on that? We can get Director Artis to.
Yeah, I'm wondering why the state's getting involved in building jet engine test cells.
Commissioner, if you'll recall in some of our conversations, one of the main pillars of trying to grow the aerospace industry in the state of Oklahoma was making Oklahoma a hotbed or a test center for jet engine MRO and development. And that is whether you have Tinker Air Force Base on the military side, or whether you have American Airlines, BizJet, Lufthansa Technique in Tulsa, some of the smaller companies like a Covington, a Mint Turbines, a CTS. There was an effort, a consolidated effort at the legislature over the last couple of years to try and figure out ways where the state could help spur on that engine MRO testing opportunities. And so that's what this bill reflected, was the desire of the legislature to, okay, let's figure out some ways that we can spend some dollars for developing infrastructure to support more engine test cells. If you look at the test cells that were built back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, as we've seen, jet engines have gotten a lot larger because of the high bypass ratio for turbofan engines. And so the need for those engines to be MRO'd, it's just a physically larger building than what they have currently done today. And so whether it's the 737 engine, whether it's the A320 engine, which both have multiple options, Pratt & Whitney, Rolls-Royce, GE, or Safran, they all have different engines that are needing different MRO activities. And if you've seen some of the challenges, some of these engines that are rolling right off the line, they have to be MRO'd almost immediately because of some of the manufacturing issues. And so our companies in Oklahoma are trying to take advantage of that from a business capital standpoint to expand their presence in the state. The first project that was a part of this program was to support a company in Tulsa called BizJet, Lufthansa Technique. The iteration that we are hopefully looking at, we'll bring that to you in July if it does pass and become law on the budget side, is a $16 million investment for engine MRO activities, which will be matched by other private and public dollars exceeding $80 million to bring in an extra several hundred jobs to the Tulsa area to support more of that engine MRO testing capability for BizJet. So that's kind of the framework. The bill that you saw that passed, if we think about it from a federal perspective, that was the authorizing piece, and then the appropriations piece is hopefully coming down the pike. It's in the bills that are being passed as we speak right now. And hopefully at some point in time, that'll be signed, and we'll bring that to you as a finished product at our July meeting or a future meeting once we have some rules that will need to be entertained.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Caitlin, will you go to the next slide, please? So just to cover a few pieces of legislation that did not make it. So Senate Bill 1210 would have authorized the use of fixed-wing aircraft by the county assessor, and it was vetoed by the governor on April 23rd, 2024. Senate Bill 1237 was the elimination of the aircraft excise tax, and that was not heard in committee. Senate Bill 1338 would have created 3 separate funds for the Oklahoma Department of Commerce, Oklahoma Space Industry Development Authority, and the Oklahoma Department of Aerospace and Aeronautics regarding an economic prosperity revolving fund, and that did not proceed. And Senate Bill 1490 was a companion bill by Senator Pugh regarding the engineer tax credit cleanup bill. Caitlin, next slide, please. These bills in the House of Representatives did not prevail. House Bill 3068 would have prohibited state entities from purchasing or providing funds related to any small unmanned aircraft system manufactured by certain foreign political entities. House Bill 3146 would have prohibited a person, a state agency, or a political subdivision from using a drone equipped with an imaging device to record an image of privately owned real property without written consent. House Bill 3426 would have restored a tax credit for investment in a qualified space transportation vehicle provider until tax year 2029, and that was aimed primarily toward OSIDA and helping their development. And House Bill 3579 would have required publicly operated airports to provide free airport parking for a disabled veteran. I can, when the legislature adjourns on Friday, I'll have my entire tracking list, and I'll send that to Tanya for her to distribute to the commissioners. Now I yield for questions.
Will there be any questions?
No.
No questions? Let me just say thank you to all of you for the effort that you put into the bills that you did work on. It's not an easy task, and for those that have never worked with the legislature, it is a very arduous task. It's sometimes, but the effort, the hours, and realistically, the relationships that have been built at the state capitol are to be commended, because we do really have some good support from the legislature, and that doesn't just happen organically. So thank you all for everything that you do in building those relationships, and it will help our not only our industry but also our agency in moving forward, doing the things that we need to do. So thank you all very much for everything that you do.
Thank you.
Okay. Item number 7. Moving on. Sandra, you're recognized.
Commissioners, just to briefly tell you about some of the things that we're working on. Event sponsorship is an efficient way for us to establish and strengthen positive associations and credibility for the Oklahoma Department of Aerospace and Aeronautics. Our reliability with our constituents can be instantly increased by partnering with well-respected, reputable, and popular events. And I will tell you that many times we have been approached regarding events that we were not able to partner with. And so the partnerships that we do choose are reputable events, and so I really want to focus on that. Value propositions for sponsors and partnerships focus on measurable, tangible benefits that sponsors and partners can expect. We have seen these benefits through aerospace industry growth, statewide media exposure, social media content, and constituent interactions. Commissioners, today I present to you a consent docket for 4 items, including the Oklahoma Aerospace Forum, which is our partnership with the Oklahoma Department of Commerce in the ACES program. That is in the fall in November, on November 12th, and that sponsorship would be $4,500. Tinker in the Primes Conference, and specifically the Women in Aeronautics event is held in August in Midwest City. That is very important for our military relationships, and so the sponsorship amount is $6,500. The 80th anniversary of D-Day Combat Dining Out, the Commission should consider the $2,000 sponsorship for this program. It's something that Caitlin and I have been working on for several weeks now with the Tinker Air Force Base. It's going to be held at the 507th. If any of you have interest in attending, this is really a time for us to work with airmen and soldiers and sailors, and for those Oklahomans that we serve, to foster and encourage aviation and aerospace throughout the state. We want them, after they conclude their military service, to stay in Oklahoma and work in the aerospace industry and to be pilots and those other things. So I would really encourage your support today on that if possible. And then the Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce membership is really important to our mission, and that's a $5,000 annual membership fee. And I would yield for any questions.
What about a membership with the City of Tulsa on the Chamber of Commerce?
Director.
Thank you for the question, Commissioner. We are currently having a discussion with Tulsa Chamber on the level and the amount, and we'll be bringing that to you probably at the July meeting. So yes, we understand that what we do in Oklahoma City also has to be equally done with Tulsa. We're still working out those details.
Sorry, thank you.
And I would just add to that, Commissioner Phillips, that we work directly with the Tulsa Chamber and also the Tulsa Aerospace Council. They're coming to our event next Monday at Tulsa International Airport. So we want to make sure that you are aware of that information. We'll make sure Tanya gets that to you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Not me.
Well, we know where you're from, Commissioner Ritz.
Any further questions? Any further questions? or comments on item number 7?
It's okay.
For those of you listening online, Commissioner Ritz received a phone call and Boomer Sooner is her ringtone.
If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I move for approval.
Second.
Okay, have a motion to approve in a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Phillips,
Aye.
Commissioner Potter,
Aye.
Chairman Ortega,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you, Sandra. Item number 8, Ms. Keady, you are up.
Good morning, Commissioners. As always, I'm happy to be here to report an update on aerospace aviation education in Oklahoma. To begin with, I would like to let you know, and I spoke about this at our last meeting, that we have completed our Bessie Coleman Aviation All-Star Field Test Program. We field tested with 3 sixth-grade schools, one in Pryor, one in Weatherford, and one in North Tulsa, Springdale Elementary in North Tulsa. It was a 10-week program. It did take some coordination because here's how it worked. If you were in Weatherford and you were in Pryor and you were in North Tulsa, you got online to visit with and interact with some special guest speakers, an FAA speaker from Washington, D.C., a general, commercial airline pilots. The students would run up to the camera, ask the questions. They were very engaged, and it was great. And so those 10 weeks on a Wednesday afternoon for about an hour and a half, they would have guest speakers, and then they would do some hands-on projects. I felt like we visited Pryor, I did a couple of times, and Stephanie as well, and watched the students interact and felt like it was a very positive program. The very end, you see Gigi Coleman there, who many of you have met at some of our other events. Gigi came in from Chicago, and Stephanie and I took her first to Springdale and Tulsa, where she met with the students, and I believe that's where those students are from. We then drove her to Pryor that same day, and she did a program that afternoon with the Pryor students. We came back to Oklahoma City that evening, spent the night, and the next day went to Weatherford, where she again did it's an impersonation. She acts as if she were her great aunt, and it's awesome. The kids really responded to that. You see those are the kids at North Tulsa Springdale Elementary. So all in all, I feel like it accomplished what we want to happen, which is how do we build this pathway back? How do we back build that curriculum so those students are fired up and ready to enter the high school curriculum that we're offering? And so this is one way, I think, and that is to reach out. Those kids are staying at the school along till 5:30 and 6 o'clock till their parents pick them up, many of them, and that's a captured time period that we could increase teaching of aerospace and aviation. So that was, I feel like, very successful. The second thing, we finished up for the most part our school visits for this year. The window will close with AOPA this Friday, May 31st, and we'll reopen again. Probably a couple of months we'll hit the road again, but our final visits, as you see them listed there, Kanawha Public Schools, Rock Creek, which is in Boca Chica down by Durant, Anadarko Public Schools, Chickasha. We're going to return to Chickasha this month and do some follow-up with them, Western Heights Public Schools, and Antlers Public Schools. Then we visited the Gordon Cooper Technology Center campus in Seminole and met with some superintendents from Seminole County. And then Stephanie went to the Gordon Cooper main campus in Shawnee and met with Pottawatomie County superintendents. I always like it when we have several superintendents in the room and we save some time by being able to really talk to them and let them ask questions. And then we did an introductory meeting with Laverne Public Schools, and we'll follow up sometime this summer with them. Our last visit is tomorrow. It's not listed there. We are going to Cristo Rey Catholic High School tomorrow, and that will pretty much be the end of the visits. I will let you know when the dust settles. I believe we'll be 115 Oklahoma high schools teaching aviation and aerospace next year. which undoubtedly, I called up there the other day at AOPA, and I said, before we announce, are you certain we're still number one in the nation? She said, there's no way anybody could catch you. So it makes us very proud, the work that this team, and Director mentioned the grants that we've implemented, the programs that we put into place, school after school still calling. We no longer reach out to them, they're reaching out to us, which is remarkable, and that's what we want to happen. We will be doing a breakout session at the COSA conference down at the Convention Center week after next, which is all the school administrators. So we'll have an opportunity there to speak as well. We also attended several other events, one in March at the 137th Special Operations Wing of the Air National Guard. Our good friend, Senior Master Sergeant Andrew Lamoureux, who has embraced aviation education through the 137 and 138, had a flight day, a flight fest, and invited some of the regional schools, Piedmont and Mustang, those schools, to come into 137th. The same followed the next week or so in Tulsa at the 138th. Again, they had hands-on, really good opportunity to visit and to see some demonstrations. I then also serve on the Tulsa Community College Air Traffic Control Advisory Board, which was really a very positive meeting. The OU advisory air traffic control folks were there, so they talked about the future of education in regard to getting more students into air traffic control. So it was a very positive meeting, and I got to get on the simulator and bring some airplanes in and act like I was that's kind of a scary thought, but I did it, okay. And then finally, Stephanie attended the unveiling, and some of you may have been there, of the new airplanes at OU, the new fleet that came in. So that was a really exciting day, and it gave us the state the opportunity, again, to feature on some of our university work. And next month, I hope to come and be able to talk to you a little about concurrent enrollment opportunities that are happening at our colleges. We've met with OU and OSU and Southeastern, so I'll follow up with that next month with some of the work we're doing, because that's the pathway too. If you've got pathway with middle school and you've got high school, they've got to have somewhere to go, and what's that next place, and how do we clarify that pathway. And then finally, the AOPA teacher training, again, that's coming to Oklahoma. The last 2 years it's been at the University of Oklahoma. This year it will be in Tulsa. It will start next Monday in the concourse of Tulsa International Airport. The teachers, there are 89 Oklahoma teachers that will be coming to training, will arrive next Monday afternoon. Their superintendents will also arrive. The teachers will be touring Spirit Aerosystems. The superintendents will tour American Airlines Maintenance Facility. They'll all come back together and for a reception and for a banquet where we'll celebrate aerospace and aviation education. We've been delighted for you to come. It's a beautiful event. We will be announcing our rank as #1 in the nation, and if you at all would be interested, we'd be thrilled if you could come. The banquet, and I thought this was really creative, Sandra worked on actually Alexis Higgins at the Tulsa airport having the banquet in the concourse of the airport. So the traffic will be going around us as we're celebrating and having the dinner. So if you would like to come, we would certainly be thrilled and welcome you there. I stand for any questions you might have.
I do have a question. What does it cost an individual if they wanted to sponsor a school or basically pay the entire out-of-pocket for a school to implement that AOPA, not including the instructor's
Correct.
salary, but for all the materials and everything else, if you wanted to get a high school on board, an individual, I'm sure, could sponsor it or basically pick up the tab for them. What would that cost be?
Well, I would say to begin year one, and perhaps with a minimum of 2 simulators, and the simulators we're using are, for the most part, a Redbird and a Gleim $5,500, $5,600 simulator. So if you had 2 simulators, the hands-on supplies for AOPA, about $1,000 per year, because a lot of it is consumable, build a hot air balloon, build a wind tunnel type material. So what are you at, 11? 50, I would hazard 15, 17,000 at the most, unless you wanted more simulators than that. And a few have asked for drones. So I would say you were in the $15,000 to $20,000 ballpark.
Don't most schools already have PCs that could be used for that?
Yes, and some of them do. On the other hand, many of them are not powerful enough to run that software. A lot of those schools have just the Chromebooks that really don't hold much software. And in the end, sometimes the simulator itself is about the same cost as it is to upgrade them to a powerful enough computer to run the software. But yes, some schools do use that method.
Paula, haven't a lot of the locations done their own fundraiser within the community and been very successful?
Yes, and some of them also, you're right, they do, and some of them have school foundations that sponsor some of their needs.
It's just another way to.
Yes. Some of them also write some Carl Perkins federal grants that will help them build laboratories, at least start the lab and start that process. Frankly, Commissioner Hunter, year one, they could make do without a simulator, to tell you the truth. It's just the basics and the foundational, but it does get them started. And year 2 and 3, so much of it is ground school, that they do need to have that equipment, if possible, at their disposal.
Actually about 4 or 5 years ago, Director Arties will remember this, that I advocated for setting up a foundation that could do things that the commission can't do. For example, raise funds to support grant programs like that to schools that otherwise couldn't afford it, or rural communities. I can see here that foundation is now going to be set up or has been approved. Is that on the agenda for that foundation?
Director.
Support these?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. We do listen. It is moving forward. We are working, if you'll remember, you have approved the members for that initial slate. And as we work through the legislative process this year, we are currently working on the bylaws and the procedures, which will come back to you probably this summer with the revisions for that document. And hopefully we'll have that stood up by the end of the calendar year. Of course, all of this is contingent upon when the IRS approves our 501c3 status, which could be anywhere from 3 months to 9 months, depending on how quickly it's moving at the federal government level. But yes, that is what you are mentioning is what we are trying to do with our Aero Foundation.
That is the goal of the foundation.
Yes. Well, it's a twofold goal. First goal is education, and the second goal is outreach. So Women in Aviation Day, Aero Day at the Capitol, all the other fundraising that we do as an agency, trying to move that through a 501c nonprofit that we are able to stand up ourselves. So twofold there. One is for education, second's for outreach.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any further comments or questions? Paula, thank you very much. On to item number 9, flight inspections. Michelle, you are recognized.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. The Commission will consider authorizing Director Arties to renew an agreement between the FAA and ODAA for flight inspection services of navigational aids. The flight inspections are required to activate lighting such as ODALs, VGSI, and reels. And the agreement will be for $50,000 and is a continuation of our current agreement. So I will stand for any questions. Staff does recommend approval.
Is this a yearly?
No, it's based upon, the current agreement expires in November of 2025. So it's dependent upon the funding, and then, do you know, is it 3 years or 5 years?
So we bring back to you a replenishment of funds as the money gets used.
Right.
So for example, a flight inspection of a PAPI system may cost $5,000. An inspection of a reels may only be $2,500, and an inspection of a MALS rail system may be more expensive, maybe $10,000. And so as those inspections happen, and we get to a low balance where we basically can't schedule any more inspections, we come back to you for approval. Now understand that most of this money is coming back to us in the form of reimbursements from the community. So for example, if an airport has a FAA grant to put in a PAPI system at the airport, as a part of that FAA grant, they can put in the cost of the flight inspection. But instead of them having to enter into a agreement with the FAA, and we have, 20 communities each year entering into individual agreements, we, the state, have said, let's have a state agreement. We will be the organizing entity for it, and then we'll have our reimbursements with those individual communities as needed per projects. And so essentially what we are doing here today is our balance with the FAA for flight inspections is fairly low, so we can only have like 2 more inspections scheduled. This $50,000 will allow us to add another anywhere from 5 to 12 inspections, depending on what exactly it is we're going to be inspecting.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Any further questions?
Any further questions? Seeing none, I'll stand for a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second. Motion to approve and second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Phillips,
Aye.
Commissioner Potter,
Aye.
Chairman Ortega,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Okay, motion passes. Thank you, Michelle. Item number 10, Mr. Ben. Airport Construction Grant Program Change Order.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner. The first item, we have an amendment for at the Kingfisher Municipal Airport. The project was to reconstruct the taxi lane and apron area. The amendment will allow for a line item adjustment. Funding will be moved from the field survey to construction and grant administration. However, the amendment will not increase the approved fund. The total cost for that project was over $394,000. And I'm standing for any question you may have.
Any questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Yes, item number 11. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You
There's a
can stay up there all you want, Ben.
There's a change order at Clinton Regional Airport. The project is a hangar. The change order will allow for removing and replacing unsuitable soil and add emergency exit lighting. The estimated additional cost will be over $34,000, and that will be funded with about $14,000 of state grant fund and shy of $21,000 of a sponsor matching fund. I'm standing for any question you may have, but staff recommend approval.
Any questions?
No.
Seeing none, I'll accept the motion.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Okay. Motion to approve and a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Phillips,
Aye.
Commissioner Potter,
Aye.
Chairman Ortega,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Okay, motion is approved. We'll move on to item number 12, Preliminary Engineering Report Program.
Yeah, this item is for the preliminary engineering reports. This year we have 5 PR overall. 4 of them gonna be for the runway rehab, for the Armour Downtown Airport, Carlton Landing, Stan Stamper, and Hefner Isley. And the last PR will be for Wiley Post Taxiway A and B rehabilitation. The overall cost for this project is over $445,000, and that will be funded with over $400,000 of a federal grant fund and over $44,000 of a state grant fund. Staff recommends approval, and I'm standing for any question.
Any questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
I move for approval.
Second.
Okay, have a motion to approve in a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Phillips,
Aye.
Commissioner Potter,
Aye.
Chairman Ortega,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter,
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Ben. Next up is item number 13, On-Demand Airport Consulting Contract Approval Consent Docket.
Morning, Chairman, Commissioners. On this first item here of mine, we're seeking approval for staff to enter into contracts for some different on-demand services as necessary for projects included in our airport construction program. So as sub-item A here, this first group, we're seeking approval of contracts for from the concept phase to the bidding phase. And so the not-to-exceed contracts for these regarding the department funds would be $75,000 to both Park Hill and Lochner for plan and spec review, $25,000 to Lochner and Park Hill for state specifications development, and the key item there being the desire to try to get some kind of state specification on some fencing so that we're not running up against $80 linear foot chain link fences that have been going on with some of the FAA-driven programs. So given the public bidding process and what that's coming out to right now, we're trying to be as economic as possible while still taking care of the issues around our airports that don't currently have fencing. Following that up, Hewitt-Zollers for independent fee analysis, not to exceed $20,000. And then $30,000 for not to exceed both LBR and KSA, and that's for airport layout drawing updates, as well as some project diagram development. And the second group of contracts, this would be for services from the bidding phase to the closeout of the project. The not-to-exceed department funds on these would be $75,000 both for Lochner and MacArthur Associated Consultants. And that would be for construction management, inspection, and bid review on the projects that we have coming up. And the final group of contracts under item C there, it includes on-demand services for developing technical documents as well as some internal training and related support services. KSA, not to exceed $75,000 for airport technical document and lease rates and charges policy development. As we mentioned before, there are some airports across the state we're needing to help get their rates and charges into a more realistic market rate in terms of the aviation market in the state of Oklahoma. And so they'll be helping develop those for some of our airports and have kind of a state template from which they can look at and judge where they're at and where they might need to put their prices in the coming years. And then for Lochner and Park Hill, not to exceed amount $10,000 each for training and process development as well. And with item 13, I stand for any questions, and staff recommends approval.
Any questions?
This is a process we go through basically every year.
Yeah, and with these, it's it's probably been a long time since we've done a contract consent docket, at least in my time here. I don't remember it, but because of the volume of the projects that we have coming down the hill, we need to make sure that we're have some additional firepower, if you will, to make sure that we're not falling behind on those projects while still giving it the due oversight that they all require.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second?
Okay, have a motion to approve in a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Phillips,
Aye.
Commissioner Potter,
Aye.
Chairman Ortega,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Motion passes. You are recognized for item number 14, Airport Project Consultant Approval Consent Docket.
Thank you, Chairman. This is similar to the previous item, at least the portion A here. So on portion A, we're seeking approval to enter into separate task order agreements as part of our acting as agent role for the Oklahoma Space Industry Development Authority. And so we're looking to help OSIDA with supporting their infrastructure investment plans into the Clinton-Sherman Airport. And the cost for this portion here in A is they'll be funded with the PREP funds that have been allocated for OSIDA. So first, it'll be Park Hill for plan and spec review, not to exceed $50,000, as well as a drainage study that they have provided an estimate for $103,509. That one being particularly important because of some of the development areas on the apron being in a floodplain. And so trying to make sure that before we really start to develop that area, we're making sure we do it correctly so that the tenants don't wind up underwater and nobody's happy at the end of the day. Moving on to Lochner, they will be assisting with aviation business and leasing support and helping with some airport technical document development. So that's, again, similar to what we had heard on the bigger group of projects in the ACP. This is to help make sure that they're coming in line with their leases, lease agreements, as well as their rates and charges, as they are, I believe, very quickly going to begin expanding even more out there, and they want to make sure that they do it right the first time and not trying to play catch up after they write the initial agreements. Lochner will also be doing the airfield electrical rehabilitation, the design of that, for $323,100. That might be a little bit larger than the airfield electrical designs that we typically see, but this is one that has over 13,000 feet of runway and parallel taxiway that they're looking to address as well. So that's why that's got the higher cost than what we'd normally see at our 3,000 or 4,000 foot runways across the state. And then Garver will be helping with the design of the fuel farm and access road for $74,900, as well as the general aviation area, taxiway area development on the north side for the design of that, just shy of $168,000. And then their design of the box hangar construction up in that area, $79,550. And again, those will be from the prep funds allocated to OSIDA. And so for item B, since we are the co-sponsor there for Carlton Landing Field, we are seeking approval to enter into a contract for the terminal area development plan, as well as the airport layout drawing update for the FAA. And that project will be funded with state funds of $116,200. Staff recommends approval for these items, and I stand for any questions.
Any questions? I have one. When we serve as an agent for this, like this, for example, what, is there anything that the agency gets in some kind of cost? Administrative cost or anything like that to help them with that?
Director, for this tranche, I'm not familiar specifically, so.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. No, we are merely doing this out of the flow-through organization to help them ensure that they're able to get the projects done that they need. So we have the technical expertise to do this, we have the relationships to do this, we have the contractual vehicles to do this. And so they're using us merely as a mechanism to enable these contracts and use our expertise.
Very good. Any questions, any comments, anything?
Good.
Okay, we have a motion.
I move for approval.
Okay, have a motion to approve in a second.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Phillips?
Aye.
Commissioner Potter?
Aye.
Chairman Ortega?
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz?
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey?
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam?
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item number 15, five-year airport construction program. Mr. Young, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And here is our kind of normal order of business here for the May timeframe. As we did our March meeting here not too long ago, I proposed our recommended changes and modifications to the ACP. During the public comment period between March and this meeting, the questions that we received were the questions that we received on our proposed projects were primarily just to verify which fiscal year they were coming in for the airport sponsors. And so due to there being very few changes from the March presentation, I do aim to go through these relatively fast since I've presented these before you once before. But please, at any point, if we need to talk about any specific project or go into some further details, I'm happy to do that on all of these. It's just we have about 62 slides to get through, and I want to be respectful of all of your time. And so as we get kicked off here, first are some projects in ADA that we discussed. The first was updating some project costs to make it come more in line with what we're seeing in the market. So a $921,000 South Hangar taxiway development area. And then in conjunction with that, constructing some T hangars as part of our hangar grant project as well, and adding that to the ACP. At Alva Regional Airport, this is a project that we talked with the FAA and have upped that discretionary project amount to try to get that done fully in one phase, whereas previously we were planning for two. So that is now just over $1 million or $4 million discretionary project with FAA funds, our portion being the 5% match. Have several runway rehabilitations that we're looking to add to the ACP. The first at Anadarko, for a $300,000, basically a crack seal coat to make sure we're staying ahead of the pavement condition index on that and the life cycle of the pavement. Similar project there at Antlers as well to rehabilitate their runway. At Ardmore Downtown Executive, we're looking to add a construction of a terminal building, partnering with some FAA funds there as well for about $2.4 million total project cost. Also at Ardmore Downtown, that's one of the places we're looking to put in some airfield fencing, and that will be obviously based off the state spec that we're working to come up with our partners there in the consulting realm. This Broken Bow project is one that is new that I did not present on in March. They had sent in a letter of interest in the public comment period to see if they could slide in, and we had been looking to do that project at some point in the near future anyway, so it fit in perfectly. So we're recommending add this replacement of runway lights project for about $425,000 state grant at Broken Bow Municipal. That'll be in the 2028 timeframe. Several projects at Carlton Landing Field that we're looking to add to the ACP, the first being a partial perimeter fence, again, depending on the state spec we're able to come up with. Also looking to construct a taxi lane and apron based off the terminal area development plan that we'll be working on here shortly, thanks to your approval here just a few minutes ago. And that'll be about a $900,000 project cost with some FAA funds, department share of $150,000. Also looking to construct a terminal building out there in the 2027 timeframe for about $1 million. And then looking to put in a big rehabilitation project in the 5 to 6 year timeframe for $2 million, partnering with some FAA funds on that, as that will be based off the life cycle of the pavement. That's where we anticipate to be based off our PCI. Adding a project at Chandler to rehabilitate their runway with a discretionary project at $2.5 million, again in the 5 or 6 year time frame. At Chattanooga Sky Harbor, the first project here was a modification to up the project based off the market cost that we're seeing. Anticipate that being about a $900,000 project for a state grant. And then following that up to add the rehabilitation of the runway in 2028 timeframe for about $950,000 based off what we've seen out there on the pavement condition. Claremore Regional, adding a project for their perimeter fence, again, determined on the state spec we're able to come up with. And then adding a project at Cleveland Municipal here to rehabilitate their runway at a $300,000 state grant. And this is another unique one here that I didn't mention in March at Cushing Municipal Airport. What I'm requesting is that we actually remove this project from the ACP for the time being. They are working with FAA to get in line with some FAA compliance issues given their structure of their hangar leases. So that's why we have been spending more time talking about hangar leases and making sure that we're helping folks with those so that they don't run afoul of ours and FAA's grant assurances. FAA has determined that they haven't quite done enough to keep out of pending non-compliance status so far, so those items will go on hold at the FAA's request, and we obviously support that as we wait for them to go through the process with FAA to get back into compliance, which I can absolutely state that their airport manager is doing the best he can at that, and will continue to work that in the right direction. At El Reno Regional, we are updating the costs here based off the market rates, so about a $1.5 million project, partnered with some FAA funds. At Elk City Regional Business Airport, this is a 100 low lead fuel system we're looking to participate in. Our portion maxed out at $300,000. The reason you see that as $1 million is because of the piping and some of the stuff they're going to need to do to get the actual dispenser to where they want it to be in relation to the fuel tanks they'll be constructing. At Enid Woodring Regional, for this taxi lane for the hangar development, we again just updating the cost on that to about a $1.92 million project, partnered with some FAA funds. And then also partnering with a utility project to bring that over to the hangar development as well, and adding that to the ACP at about $475,000 total project cost. At Guthrie Edmond, updating the cost on their new taxi lane to about $1.92 million project on that as well. Again, that'll help open up the entire southwest side of that airport as they work through some land acquisitions and those types of things, and we work toward the terminal building in the coming years. Halliburton Field and Duncan, $9 million project. That's an FAA discretionary project to rehabilitate their runway. The higher cost there being that they'll be working to try to work out the weight-bearing capacity issues out there as part of that project as well. Updated the cost at Hefner Easy for a $1.5 million FAA grant here to rehabilitate their runway. At Hinton Municipal, looking to add them to the hangar program as well for about $1.2 million. At Hollis Municipal, adding a rehabilitation here in the 2026 timeframe. Medill, they're simply sliding back a year as they work through their justification with the FAA to get their new runway constructed to the east. Adding to the ACP project at McAllister to rehabilitate the parallel taxiway as well as their runway and taxiway lighting. About a $1.6 million project there as through partnering with some FAA funds. And also at McAllister looking to acquire land as it becomes available. That'll be determined by the assessments, obviously, that we have to have done during that process, but anticipating somewhere around a $300,000 land acquisition out there. Miami Regional, looking to add a fence project out there as well. At Mulgee Regional, this is adding construction of a new and reconfiguring the terminal apron for about $2.5 million, anticipating that to be an FAA project at our portion being 5%. At Pauls Valley Municipal, looking to add the parallel taxiway project to get that into modern design standards. They're correcting that north end 90 degree, about a $2.5 million FAA project cost. And then moving on to Perry, that being another FAA project we're looking to add in for a $4 million runway rehabilitation. Ponca City, we're looking to slide back their terminal and turbulent aprons to just where we feel like they're going to come to fruition here. The $4 million terminal building sliding back to 25, and then the terminal apron, a $3.1 million FAA project sliding back to 2027. Prague Municipal Airport, another runway rehabilitation, approximately $600,000 estimated. And then at Robert S. Kerr Airport in Poto, we are going to go ahead and move forward with the rehabilitation portion of this. It's been in our ACP for a while. That'll be an FAA project, about $2.5 million. And we're splitting that from the extension that you see on the next slide of the $4 million extension that we anticipate to come in the following years, currently looking at about a 2027 timeframe as we work to get that smoothed out with FAA as well. Adding a hangar project at Salisaw for a total of $2 million to get them a hangar built down south portion of their development area. And at Mangum Scott Field, runway rehabilitation via state grants for anticipating about a $950,000 project cost. Also adding a terminal building project at Seminole for $2 million. And at Shawnee, we have a few projects that we are wanting to add to assist them in trying to get some of their stuff rebuilt, given what they've gone through in the past year and a half, 2 years. $2.5 million terminal building that we're looking to add. Constructing a taxi lane for hangar development so that they can work on getting their T-hangars built. That's a $500,000 project. And then the T-hangar building itself at a $2 million project through our hangar grant program. At Stigler Regional Airport, we're seeking a project to improve the runway safety area and drainage there for about $605,000, partnering with some FAA funds. At Tahlequah Municipal, as we talked about, trying to open up the northeast side. The first one here being to construct the taxi lane for $900,000, partnered with some FAA funding. And then also partnering with FAA on constructing some T-hangars, again to try to get some of those folks on the west side to move over to the east side so they can come into full compliance. At Thomas Municipal Airport, a FAA project for about $2 million to rehabilitate their runway in the 2028-29 timeframe. At Veneta, we have a few different projects we're seeking to add, the first being to construct a new airport entrance road and parking area for $950,000. Also looking to partner with some FAA funds to construct a new terminal apron and connector taxiway out there for $1.3 million. Construct a new terminal building as part of the terminal program, anticipated somewhere about $1 million. Primarily wanted to state that it will be a little bit smaller than what we've seen at, say, Ponca City or those types of things, just mainly to right-size it for the community and where they're heading. And then at Watonga, we have a couple of different projects. The first one we've updated the cost for to about a $1.7 million project to get the taxi lane and apron on the west side of the airport built out. And then following that up with the construction of a terminal building over there on the west side as well for $2 million. At West Woodward Airport, these are items I didn't mention in March, and this is primarily because we've gotten some additional information on their prep projects. And so we've broken these out so we can kind of see what these look like, but do keep in mind that this will be funded by the prep funding dedicated for West Woodward. So the first one being a $3.5 million terminal building project, prep funds. Also constructing a taxi lane and utilities for the, to open up a south 59-acre hangar development area for $3.5 million. Looking to construct a corporate hangar for $3 million there in that same area. Reconstruct their fuel farm and apron for $1.3 million. And rounding out those projects, the construction of their runway extension, and that does include the parallel taxiway extension as well, for about $6.1 million estimated currently, and those again being with their prep funding. Wilburton Municipal looking to add a runway rehabilitation for $300,000 out there as well in the 2026 timeframe. Wiley Post, we are seeking to rehabilitate the taxiway Bravo. We modified the pricing of this as a discretionary project for $2.5 million. And last but not least, we're seeking to add a hangar project at William R. Pogue Sand Springs Airport for currently looking about $1.5 million project there. Again, I know I went through these pretty quickly. I know there's a lot of these to have some questions over, so if there's any questions at all, please feel free. I'm happy to discuss any of them. But staff recommends these modifications in approving the FY 2025-2029 airport construction program.
Did we miss Thomas?
No, we're covered.
We got it? Okay.
Yeah.
I missed Thomas then. Thank you. And it sounds like Woodward's really slamming it hard.
They are working hard to get those prep funds put into the ground.
Okay.
Any further questions, comments?
It's a lot of work.
Anyone? It is
Amen.
a lot. Do I have a motion?
Move approval?
Second?
Okay, motion to approve in a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Phillips,
Aye.
Commissioner Potter,
Aye.
Chairman Ortega,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Young. Item number 16, prep fund project. Director Arties, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Item 16, we have two prep grants before you for consideration today. The first one is the Tulsa International Airport Air Traffic Control Tower. We're looking at about, if we go to the next slide, about $108 million total project cost. About 75 of that is for construction of the tower and associated buildings. The remaining is for equipment and oversight with the FAA to get this tower constructed. As you all recall from our prep fund program updates, the legislature dedicated $20 million of state funds to the tower. We have approved about, you have approved about $3.6 million of that for a design grant that obviously has come to a conclusion. They bid the project out. They have awarded that project, and they have submitted a grant application to us for the remainder of their prep monies. Today, you're considering the remainder of that department share being just shy of $16 million, $15,999,425 for the Tulsa International Air Traffic Control Tower. If you'll go back one slide real quick. If you'll go back and you'll see the current picture there on the top right, that's the existing tower as well as the mobile tower that they have to go into if the existing tower has an issue or they find asbestos again. And then, of course, on the bottom there is the rendering for what the new tower would look like once it is all said and built. And then item B before you is the next phase of the cargo development at Ardmore Municipal Airport. That is for the cargo apron. You all have approved all the design costs for the projects that are going to be going on at Ardmore. You've approved the construction project for taxiway Echo that you can see there, which is the chunk of the parallel along the primary runway on the right side of that picture. The cargo apron is the two airplanes you see there in the middle right of the picture, and that is a project that's going to be $2.269099 million, funded 100% by prep monies. The reason we're showing it this way, that the project is a little more expensive than that, but they've also gotten some federal earmark monies, not through FAA, but through a different federal organization. Total project's going to be between $5 and $6 million, but the prep share is $2.269099. So I'll stand for any questions, but staff recommends approval on these two prep grants that are before you today.
Any questions on item number 16.
We better get invited to a groundbreaking of some kind at that tower. That's.
You say that
Everyone is
jokingly,
completed
Commissioner.
at least.
Yes, I have. I know
Yeah.
they're working on it earnestly. They're trying to get some. Not that I don't consider myself special, but they're trying to get some very, very, very special people to attend said groundbreaking, because it is not every day that a tower of that nature gets broken ground on or completed. Obviously, the breaking ground we're going to hopes take place sometime this summer, and then I think they're looking at about a 2 to 2.5 year construction project. So probably won't be till sometime in 2026, early 27 before it's all said and done. But I share your comment, and as soon as we do have a date and a time, we will make sure to share that with commissioners, because this is, I knock on wood, don't ever hope to have to do this again at an airport of this nature.
And this is probably the biggest project that this commission has ever been associated with.
That is a fact, yes. There have been other projects. The AAR hangar was probably our next largest project that was approved at the last commission meeting, and here we are, the tower project. This is probably the largest project we will ever be a part of.
Yeah.
For some foreseeable time. Anytime you hit 9 figures in a total project cost, that's not something you see on a regular routine basis.
Right.
Any questions, any further comments? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Okay, motion to approve in a second. Any further discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Commissioner Phillips,
Aye.
Commissioner Potter,
Aye.
Chairman Ortega,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey,
Aye.
Commissioner Putnam,
Aye.
Commissioner Hunter.
Motion passes. Item number 17, prep fund update. Rick Arties, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The remainder of the prep fund projects, obviously in Nick Young's ACP item a few items ago, you'll see the Woodward projects. They have finally coalesced around that group of projects for what they want to see moving forward, assuming those can all get done within the $20 million that has been allotted to them by the legislature. We just mentioned the MRO hangar at Will Rogers. That groundbreaking happened just a few weeks ago, and I won't steal thunder from Caitlin, who will be talking about that groundbreaking here at a future agenda item. That project will, while we did the ceremonial dirt turning, I think that project will actually start turning dirt here in the next month or two. Construction will be on site, and I know they're aiming for end of 2025, early 2026 completion timeframe on that project. Ardmore, which you all just approved a chunk of their air cargo, and I had mentioned that momentarily ago. The taxiway is under construction. Air cargo will be coming under construction here shortly. The remaining amount of those projects is going to be for the utilities, for the roadway that comes into the cargo area, and I hope to have bids for those particular projects to finish out the $22.35 million that Ardmore was allotted sometime between here and the end of the calendar year. So our 4 major prep directed projects are moving forward as expeditiously as possible. Our $14 million of prep hangar competitive program funds would encourage you. We've got a handout here that we always offer to the public about our prep and ARPA monies, and would welcome you or anyone in the public to take one of those and see, here's the hangar projects that we have going on. I'd say about 20% of those hangar projects in total are under construction. Another probably 50 to 60% are in design phase or have received bids and are getting us a grant. And then the remaining, you're not supposed to do public math, 20 to 30% are in design scoping and figuring out what design they would like to do. And so we know we're trying to get those monies in the ground as expeditiously as possible. We have $4 million of prep commercial air service. As you all remember, we approved the Tulsa commercial air service grant at a previous meeting. I have been in discussions with Will Rogers and understand that their grant for commercial air service will be sent to us in earnest sometime this summer, maybe potentially for a July commission meeting consideration. Obviously, if that is the case, we'll report that to you as an action item at a future meeting. And then, of course, you all saw some of the approvals that you considered earlier on the agenda we are working in earnest with our friends at OSIDA and trying to help them get their prep dollars expended now that they've asked for our assistance. Anytime an airport comes to us, especially a sister state agency that is operating an airport, we want to help. We want to be able to be there for them, and we know what that asset can mean to the Western Oklahoma if it is developed appropriately and it becomes a usable and functional asset and not just an unfunded mandate to put money into. And so I know they've got plans, and we're working to help implement those plans, even though that's not technically our prep money, but we want to see it be successful because it is, at the end of the day, part of the aviation aerospace network here in the great state of Oklahoma. So that concludes my prep fund update, but I'll certainly stand for any questions or comments you may have.
Any questions? Seeing none, Director Ardis, you can continue with item number 18, discussion possible action related to airports in the Oklahoma airport system. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Item 18 is an item that we have discussed in the past. Wanted to gather some additional information and documentation from you, as I have sent to you previously and as we'll discuss here today. The background history of the Lake Texoma State Park Airport is that our responsibility is that by state law, any airport that is owned by a state entity was within the primary operational development jurisdiction of this agency, the department. So in this case, tourism, which is the ownership interest of the land, some they own by fee simple, some they lease from the Army Corps of Engineers, as a lot of state parks are on Army Corps land. But our involvement is by state statute. So if you look in Title III, it clearly says all state-owned airports, with the exception, of course, of OSIDA, because OSIDA is its own organization and governs its own airport. So with the exception of OSIDA, we, as the state, operate that airport. And so when we have applied for FAA grants in the past at state park airports, the FAA terms us as co-sponsors. That is not a term of law, but that is just a term of practicality in that we are co-sponsors. It takes two to tango when we do something at a state park airport. As we've discussed previously, the tourism department has desires. They are requesting action from us, again, as the two to tango option, to begin the process to remove that airport from the NIPIUS, which is the federal system, with the intent to close and abandon that facility. And so our options, as we have discussed, are as follows. Option one is to make a joint request with OTRD to FAA to remove the airport from the NIPIUS and take those steps, figure out what those steps are and what the requirements will be needed to get that process done. As we all have discussed and heard, this is a little bit similar to what happened at Lake Murray, but a little bit different because Lake Murray was an obligated airport. We had taken grant dollars at that airport just few years previous to the consideration of that happening. And then the second option here is to take the necessary action to program investment in the airport to bring it up to an FAA in state standard that we believe will make it a functional facility moving forward. So those are the two options that are before you today. And as we go through some of the slides, I want to share with you some of the comments and some of the additional data that we've collected at your request from the last meeting where we discussed this item. If you go to the next slide, please. So in looking at the history of this airport, we have found that the last FAA grant that it received was 1966. In the late 50s, it had a few grants to get the airport up and running, and then in 1966 it was extended out to its current length of 3,000 feet. There was a minor crack seal project done by the county in 2014, but that is the only investment that we have been able to track in terms of pavement repairs at the airport. So the airport has long been unobligated. As you can see here, the first slide to you today is the pavement inspection report that our team has done. As you know, the PCI is a score of 0 to 100. As you can see there, the runway is at 55, the connecting taxiway is at 39, and the aprons are at 36 and 44 respectively. And so the pavement, just to give you an understanding of pavement life cycles, and I know Ben and Kelly previously, as well as some of the consulting engineers have discussed pavement condition indexes and what that means. If you look at the way a pavement behaves, whether it's concrete or asphalt, for the first many years of its life, obviously pavement's never as good as when it starts at 100. From 100 to 65, pavement deteriorates at a fairly linear trajectory. It does have a little bit of a curve towards the end, but fairly linear. And so that 100 to 65 time may take 15 or 20 years to get there. It may go down at a fairly linear trajectory over a fairly long time. But once we get to that 65 breakover point, it starts deteriorating very rapidly. And so what may have taken 15 or 20 years to go from a 35-point decrease of 100 to 65 to go from 65 to 30, that same 35-point decrease may only take 5 to 7 or 8 years. It can go very rapidly depending upon how that pavement is impacted and what distresses we're experiencing. Out here, we're experiencing seasonal environmental distresses from lack of pavement maintenance. And if we go to the next slide, you can see some of these pictures. This is the 3/6 end of the airport. Looking northbound at the runway, as you can see, there's not any kind of load-related distresses that we're noticing in the pavement. We're just noticing that it's really basically block cracking. And if we go back to our pavement studies, block cracking is merely just the end of the life of that asphalt, that it's the binder, the asphalt material is starting to wear out, and the pavement's becoming stiff. As we know, asphalt pavement's a little bit more flexible than concrete. And so that asphalt binder material is what makes the asphalt pavement flexible. If we'll go to the next slide, you see some additional pictures of the pavement area. This is the apron looking south towards the connecting taxiway. And then the next picture is the connecting taxiway looking out towards the runway from that main apron. And then the next slide is the secondary apron, which is a little closer to the runway. As you can see there, that's fairly block cracked. In the next slide, and this is off the approach end of 3/6. As you can see, the trees and the rising terrain there. At the end of the day, the airport has more than just pavement issues. It has some standards issues to go along with it. So if we'll go to the next slide, this is an overview of the airport and exactly some of the dimensions. So off the end, you see the approach paths and the RPZs. What you see in the light green on the right and the little bit of a darker green on the left, about 80% of that area has trees in it that would likely have to be removed to meet FAA primary surface and transitional surface standards from obstructions. If we're trying to make this a safe, functional, and standard airport, that's one of the things that we're going to have to go consider moving forward. And if we go to the next slide, we have a little bit of a zoomed in on the north end. As you can see, the trees on the north end aren't necessarily there, but there are obstructions. The secondary apron is in with the runway protection zone. As you can see there on the sides, there are some trees. If we go to the next slide, we'll get a screenshot or an in-close look at the south end. And as you can see there, same situation is occurring. When these state park airstrips were created back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, it was with the intent to be a fly-in and fly-out airport. It was never intended to be a developable facility for hangars. In fact, when I went out there and looked at this facility several weeks ago, there are room for maybe a handful of hangars to be placed at the airport, but for the most part, the challenging terrain and the reason for why the apron happens to be in the place that it is that's the only location for that airport to be located. We look at some of the others that have been closed over the years. It's the same situation. These 3,000-foot runways were kind of squeezed into an area where it was merely intended to be not a based facility, but just a fly-in and fly-out facility for recreational aviation. As you know, since 1999 and the original airport system plan that we did, we've had a responsibility to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollar. In fact, you just saw through the ACP process that we had several projects in there for many airports that had many based airplanes across the state of Oklahoma. Since 1999, we have taken 16 airports out of the system in some form or fashion or closed those airports. And that is us being good taxpayer stewards. We have the highest ranked unclassified airports in the country in terms of airports that are in the FAA system but no longer receive FAA dollars. This airport received $150,000 a year from 2001 to 2012 when it became unclassified. And of course, in our co-sponsor relationship with tourism and the conversations they've been having with private developers in the area, they did not want to further obligate the airport in any way, shape, or form, so we did not put any maintenance into that airport at the end of the day. And so it is a duty of ours that we must take seriously when we get a request like this, to evaluate all the options, to consider what needs to happen, and potentially make the request for moving forward. At your chairs, you'll have some letters that we've received from various entities, a couple of the entities in the area that obviously have interest in the airport. And I will say the airport is used from time to time, occasionally, by those communities that fly in, or by those entities that fly in for the community and the lake traffic. But there's no based airplanes right there right now. There is no fuel systems, no hangar buildings, no terminal buildings. It is used as an alternate field for Southeastern's flight program for touch and go training. I will state that when we first were considering this item, there are two other airports in the area that are in what I would call a much better, much more developable long-term state, in the Durant Airport at 18 miles and the Medill Airport at 19 miles. Durant obviously has all the amenities of a traditional airport: instrument approaches, long runway, can handle 98% of the business jet traffic fleet. Medill is a 3,000-foot runway. It has based aircraft. It does have some capabilities to it. As you saw in our ACP item, here in the next 5 years, we have plans to relocate that runway over to the east, expand it, grow it to at least 4,000 feet, but the potential of maybe making it 5,000 feet if it needs jet-capable traffic in the future. But at the end of the day, our interest here as an agency, this is my opinion as representing the staff, is that we have an interest to develop successful airports, airports that can grow and succeed, airports that will be able to regularly receive federal dollars, making sure that, provided they're in the NIPIUS, I know we have some airports that are not in the NIPIUS, but trying to figure out ways to develop a system that is self-sustainable, that can grow into being a reliable and used airport. And yes, you'll see in some of those letters AOPA. AOPA has never met an airport it doesn't like. In fact, they wrote a very similar letter when we had the consideration for Lake Murray. They wrote a similar letter for all the other 16 airports that we have removed from the system since 1999, and I certainly well respect AOPA for its desire to argue on behalf of its members. We have a good working relationship. Obviously, we wouldn't be where we are today on aero education without AOPA, but at the end of the day, I think we have a healthy responsibility to ensure that if there's going to be an airport out there that we invest in, it's going to be successful and functional for the future. The property that the airport sits on, as I'd mentioned in the initial presentation here, partly owned in fee simple by the State Department of Tourism, mostly owned by the federal government on a long-term lease to the State Department of Tourism. I've seen several potential maps that show future roadways, future retail establishments, future golf course holes. The main challenge that has been indicated to me at this time is that the hotel that is proposed on private property that's adjacent to the airport right now would be limited to only a couple of stories tall, and they would like to, they have plans for I think a 10 or 11 story tall hotel that the airport is essentially preventing from moving forward. And so besides all that, whether we come to the conclusion of should we or should we not invest in the airport, if we don't have a partner in the tourism department that is willing to invest in these airports, we don't have any other alternative options. We can, if we choose nothing, if we choose to do no action, the airport will continue to deteriorate, and we will have a safety situation in our hand at some point in time in the future where we go, look, it's not worth the risk to us from a public liability standpoint to have an airport out there that doesn't meet standards, that's unsafe, and that we don't believe meets those standards, because why would we not, if we're not holding ourselves to those standards, how can we expect the other airports around the system in Oklahoma to be held to those standards as well? And so at the end of the day, I want to have a healthy discussion and a healthy discourse about this particular item. There's been discussions over the time about, well, I think $50,000 would rejuvenate and regenerate that runway for the next 40 or 50 years. I can tell you candidly that a crack seal coat on that runway may give them a couple more years of life. It may prevent the deterioration for a handful of years, but even if someone went and put a $3 million concrete white top on top of that runway, it's not going to last for 40 to 50 years. It's going to require massive, significant investment. In fact, if you saw some of the calculations I did, the minimal overlay project that I think that we can do is about $1.4 million out there to go just not do any crack preparation, just go out there, put a tensile fabric down, clear the grass in the cracks, and put a 2-inch overlay on top after we've milled it. I think that's the bare minimum investment that we're looking at to get this airport back to a pavement function standpoint. That doesn't even include the clearing of trees or the safety area issues. And then, of course, reconstruction's even higher than that at close to $3 to $3.5 million of funds to reconstruct the entire pavement areas at the airport. So with that being said, I do want to have some questions and hear what you all have to say. But I do believe at this point, staff is going to recommend option 1, that we join tourism in the removal of this airport from the NIPIUS and to write a letter to the FAA indicating our desire to close it and figure out what the next steps are in that process. So I'm going to step away from the mic, get some water, but I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
That's good. Okay. Grayson, I think you've done a great job of just bringing the information to us and kind of shedding light on the situation. We've had a few discussions, but I think about the Murray Airport and Carlton Landing where there's the developments, and I see some of the developments are coming in this area, and I look at some of these letters from people around there that utilize it. I think it's an airport that's got a lot of potential. I know it's good. There's a lot of work that would need to be done, but I just hate to see an airport like this just go away with what's on the horizon. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. But
I would concur. My concern is the Department of Tourism and Recreation doesn't seem to operate it at all. It seems like they've abandoned it, or maybe I have the wrong impression. But, they're not interested in it, yet the people who use it are.
So to answer that question, Commissioner, we are the operator. So they are the leasehold interest or fee simple interest landowner. We are the operator, and we have been told that tourism, and again, I'm an aviation guy, not the tourism guy here. They believe that use of land would be better utilized as tourism activity than aviation activity, and so that is why we have not invested in that airport. Whether you want to invest or not, the point is it takes two to tango, and it's if you look at the letter from the county commissioner, he's in the same boat. That he believes that the situation is to the point because 10 years ago he was in a different spot. He went and invested his own dollars at the county level to put a crack seal in, but then he saw that there really hasn't been further development happening at the airport in the 10 years since he did his first investment. And so yes, while we have been withheld from investing, it's not necessarily been just because tourism has not wanted to invest in the airport. I think personally, this is staff level experience, that investing $1.4 million or even $300,000 or $400,000 in an airport that has zero-based aircraft, that has very little development potential for hangars and based aircraft, you have to understand that we will probably never get this airport back in the federal system for funding for future use. This will always be reliant upon state dollars and will be very unlikely to ever receive federal dollars in the future because it can't get to the 10-based aircraft number. And at the end of the day, tourism, it's their call whether or not they want to see this airport succeed, grow, do good things from a airport standpoint. So do they want to have hangars be based out there? Do they want to have a fuel system on that property? That's their judgment call. We are merely the airport operators providing that aviation aerospace expertise to help things move forward. So I hear your all's points, and certainly in the example of Carlton Landing, where we have a situation, where we can build hangars, we built 10 hangars. We've got fuel. We've got a little bit of an office building with a restroom in it. that airport is back in the federal system. It has money that's flowing again. We have that airport that meets federal and state safety standards. Be very tough to do here at Lake Texoma. I just don't see how that's potentially possible to recreate what happened at Carlton Landing at Lake Texoma.
Are there any based aircraft here currently?
No, sir. Zero based aircraft.
So the tourism doesn't want to throw in their portion.
No.
That is correct.
And it doesn't sound like the county wants to be in on it. And there is no city, is there?
No, the sponsors are us in tourism. So
That's right.
there's no city, and the county merely came in back in 2014 as a little bit of a white knight to help go and basically remark the runway and seal the cracks on their own dime. Because, you know, could we have done that in 2014? Yes, but then the obligation would have been to keep that airport open for another 20 years, which tourism did not want to do at that particular point in time. So at the end of the day, you know, from my perspective, tourism has asked us of this closure because they believe that the use of land has other better tourism activities on it than having an airport. I think it's up to me as the aviation guy in the room to judge whether or not this airport has the potential to grow, to be successful, and what investments required to that. And like I said, at the staff level, the staff calculations, I don't see how that works because, and here's the other challenge, if we do go invest in this airport at the $400,000 level, or what I think is the minimum of $1.4 million to go actually do the mill and overlay, we then have another 20 or 25 airports in the state of Oklahoma that will have seen this, that also have zero-based airplanes, and they're gonna come with their hands held out saying, hey, you gave Texoma $1.4 million, we need that same $1.4 million. So I think we as the staff see, okay, if we're going to go invest in Texoma, that then changes the calculus for all these other airports in the state of Oklahoma. We have to go invest in them too at an equal level. And one, we don't have the budget to do that. And two, I don't think from a taxpayer perspective and from a best use of the aviation dollar, that's the best route to go. But again, that's my point of view. And that's why we have come to that recommendation for option one at this point in time.
Do you have any data on the amount of usage of the runway?
So right now, based on what the park is telling us, there's about 300 operations per year that would not be considered what you would call touch and go operations. So, you know, when Southeastern comes over and they do touch and goes, they're not actually coming to the airport to go utilize the facility. They're just doing touch and goes and practice landings, which easily could be done somewhere else in the vicinity. They believe, based on their calculations and park rangers, about 300 operations a year, which is 150 landings of people that are actually coming into the airport and going into that facility.
Could you go back a couple slides that you were showing?
Sure.
Right there. We have a casino off the end of the runway there?
That is correct. So the Chickasaw Nation, I believe, has a casino there to the east of the end of 1-8. And then off the end of the runway to the north, they have the golf course called Chickasaw Point. Just across the highway to the north.
And you're within walking distance of a marina.
Right, correct. That marina, so the roadway that you see there that runs just to the east of the airport is owned privately by Point Vista Development. And so that's their planned development area that they are going to be building out in the future to, again, deal with all the tourism issues that they believe are important to the area.
Well, tourism has a financial interest in closing down this airport. Their interest is not to keep it open. They do better if that hotel can go vertically, have more units, and pay more in taxes.
I think that tourism's interest in the airport being closed is they believe there are better tourism activities for that piece of property than keeping it open as an airport.
I don't think it's that piece of property. I think it's the hotel next door that wants to go vertical.
Well, I think it's conglomerated together, yes.
Because they see revenue. And
Well, I don't know that tourism's getting revenue off of this from
No, from the hotel.
Well, the state of Oklahoma would get revenue off the hotel, but tourism doesn't get that money. The only money that tourism would get is if they were to sublease the land that the airport is currently occupying right now.
Now, the land is not ours and not theirs. It belongs to the Army Corps of Engineers, so
That's correct.
that, sale of that to a private entity is above our pay grade. That's theirs to sell, theirs to keep, theirs to lease, theirs to whatever.
And that's kind of, my viewpoint, Commissioner, is I'm not here to make the judgment call as to what is the best use of land from a tourism standpoint. That's tourism's point of view, that's their expertise. I'm coming at this from the aviation standpoint of,
I'm simply saying you have a conflict of interest. It may be in their best interest to see that hotel go vertical.
right,
It's not use of it as a runway.
right. And
It's
that's.
a shame to see, I agree with the letters, it is a shame to see any airport shut down. And at the end of the day, you have to weigh, it is a high-growth area, high tourism area. I hate to see any airport shut down, but the cost of maintenance or overlay and bringing it up to par has to be weighed against what do we think the tourism impact is, how much use is it going to get as that area expands?
I would agree with that statement, and in my mind, so, I take this from a single airport point of view to the system point of view across the state of Oklahoma. And my fear is, we make a decision to go invest any kind of dollars here, whether it's the $300,000 or $400,000 to go repair the cracks and put a seal coat, and then, whatever needs to be done on top of that to trim trees, or the $1.4 million mill and overlay for all the pavement areas. We will then have 15 or 20, maybe 25 airports coming in behind them saying, hey, you did this for Lake Texoma, now where's my money? And so
The answer would be, where's your lake? Where's your marina? Where's your hotel?
Yeah.
What would be some of those 25, 30 what would be some examples of those airports that would maybe be potential?
Well, so
They're all
Tisham,
airports that have based aircraft. That's the problem.
yeah, so the
And
challenge
this is
is you
not-
have Tishomingo as an example. That's kind of near the lake here in this situation that has, I think, one based airplane, 3,000-foot runway, but has virtually zero chance of ever getting to 10 based airplanes. You have Hilton in south central Oklahoma that has that same situation. You have Henrietta in eastern Oklahoma. I can get you the list of airports that has, but basically in our minds as staff, when we go through the evaluation of airport projects, if an airport's got 5 based aircraft or more, it's worthwhile of potentially investing in from a maintenance standpoint. But if you come to us with 5 based aircraft and you say, hey, I need $2 million to go reconstruct my runway, it's a tough conversation to have. As a good steward of taxpayer dollars, would it be better to spend that $2 million at an airport that had 5 based aircraft? Or would it be better to spend that $5 million on an airport that had 25 based aircraft and growth and development potential? I mean, that's the situation that we have here is, yes, they have a lake nearby, but if we go invest in this airport, we also have to understand this is only ever going to be a VFR airport, never going to have instrument approaches, likely will never be able to receive federal dollars. It's a situation that many of our airports are in, and that, from my perspective, when you look at it from just an airport standpoint to the bigger system point of view, that's the challenge, is I have an airport that I have invested a significant chunk of money in that then gives us a precedential opportunity to go have other airports say, hey, we would like that same treatment. And they would have similar arguments to, well, we may not have a lake, but we have this, or we have that, or we have this other attraction in our community that we believe warrants that same investment that you've put in here at Lake Texoma. So those are all the calculations that have been rolling around in my head and staff's head as we've gone over this for the last 3 months. And Commissioner Hunter as you know.
Cut it loose.
So that's the logic that I'm going with at this point in time.
And,
Couple questions.
go ahead.
So we've established tourism wants out, sooner the better for them. We know the condition, but we also know what's currently around it, some of the assets. We don't know on the horizon any imminent structures, although Commissioner Hunter talked about the pros and cons of Hard Rock. Do they want to be taller? What about local sponsors with people who already have investments? Any interest, I would think, again, to have some kind of a runway, some kind of an airport?
So when we had this situation come to fruition back in 2014, really the only person of interest that even said, hey, we would want to step up and do something from a governmental function to take this over as a sponsor, what was the county. We asked Kingston, City of Kingston, they didn't have any. Obviously Medill's already got their own airport, and then to the east you have Durant. And so there was very little public sponsor buy-in to this facility long term. And so that's, the county commissioner said, hey, I'll go spend some, I'll take my own crews out there, we'll go fill the cracks, we'll go cut the grass. And so in the last 10 years, they did that the one time. As you can see, the county commissioner, he is now conflicted, and he has changed his opinion from what it was in 2014, that he believes that, again, the land is better used not as a airstrip, but as a tourism activity or a tourism attraction in other methods and means. And so that's the struggle in my mind, is even if we had, because like I said, there's room for about maybe 3 hangars where the windsock currently sits. So if we took the windsock away and you're able to put 3 hangars there, but those 3 hangars are only 3 based airplanes, you're still 7 short. And I've been to look at the facility. I don't think there's any situation where you can put hangars to the west of the airport, because you have a lot of trees. You've got a pretty significant deep slope on the south 60% of the runway. And again, all that development opportunity is somewhat moot, because we don't have the controlling interest in the land. That's tourism and the Army Corps that has the controlling interest in that land. And if they don't want to have hangars on that facility, it doesn't matter how much we can say we want to put hangars there. That's their choice as the owners of the land. We are merely the aviation party at hand here. Sure.
Again, we would be 100% of the dollars if we were to do something. But is there any chance its runway at some point could be extended or anything like that?
There is zero chance for an extension of this runway. In fact, to meet standards, we'd probably have to narrow it to maybe 28, maybe 2750 to meet those FAA standards for safety considerations. So, if you look there on the south end, in fact, if we go one slide more, Caitlin, one more. So if you look there on the south end, that drops off very rapidly into one of the fingers or the inlets for Lake Texoma. And one, from an environmental standpoint, near impossible. From a construction standpoint, very, very expensive. And I don't see how an extension is possible here. They're at 3,000 feet. What we have found is when these airports were built and extended back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, they were extended to their kind of maximum length use that they had at that point in time. And so when they extended this in 1966 with FAA funds, that they went to the maximum, which was 3,000 feet.
So these people that are using the airport, where are they based at then?
Well, they're going to be based at other airports in the area. I know of one that's on a little private grass strip that is in the vicinity, but based at Medill, based in North Texas, that come over and use that. And then obviously a lot of mostly the 300 operations that the park managers have indicated to us is the itinerant traffic, people flying in for a weekend lake opportunity. I know there's a couple of local pilots that are there, but most of it are folks that are flying in for a lake weekend trip.
Use the marina.
Marina, their house, whatever it might be that's in the vicinity.
Yeah.
So
just a quick tidbit here. I looked up this airport on ForeFlight, and just bear with me for a minute. But if you guys think about this, you've got 3 other airports that are here within this general vicinity. You've got Medill, Tishomingo, and Durant, and those are all within about 12 to 13 miles of this airport. And then if you look at the comments on this same airport, there's two comments on there that are saying, hey, the approach of this runway is very steep. It's challenging. So when you think about that, you look at it from a safety. I'm looking at it kind of from a safety standpoint, and I'm almost thinking that if we funnel money into this, and somebody gets hurt and that approach area is not correct or somebody gets hurt. I mean, that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Which way is the liability?
Okay.
Right.
Any further comments from the commissioners? Any questions?
Hate to lose one.
Okay, so just for clarification, Director, the question before this commission is a motion to consider option number 1 as recommended from the staff.
That is correct. So staff is recommending option 1, make a joint request with OTRD to FAA to remove the airport from the NIPIAS and take the steps needed to close, abandon the airport, and determine what requirements will be needed for this process. So, FAA may come back and say, we have to do X, Y, and Z. And so if we have to do X, Y, and Z, then we will take those steps to do X, Y, and Z. And so that's, we're kind of in uncharted territory here because I know exactly how it happened on Lake Murray. But again, Lake Murray was a little bit of a horse of a different animal. It was obligated. It had taken $400,000 of grant money just 5 years prior to us taking the action to close that facility. And so it's different. This is an unobligated airport. I still think some of the steps that we did in Lake Murray will be required here, but that's why we're going to make this joint request if that is the direction that you all go. But yes, that's what staff recommends approval is option 1.
Okay. Moving forward, do I have a motion to accept option number 1 as recommended by staff?
I will make the motion.
Okay, have a motion. Have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion? We have a motion to approve and a second. Please call the roll.
Commissioner Phillips,
Aye.
Commissioner Potter,
Aye.
Chairman Ortega,
Aye.
Commissioner Ritz,
Aye.
Commissioner Rainey,
Nay.
Commissioner Putnam,
Nay.
Commissioner Hunter.
Aye.
Motion
Sad.
passes. Okay. On to item number 19. Sandra, you're recognized.
Commissioners, I just wanted to briefly, I know we're a little tight on time, so I'm just going to go over this very briefly. Caitlin, if you'll advance to the next slide. The Oklahoma Department of Aerospace and Aeronautics partnered with the ACES team and the Oklahoma Department of Commerce at HAI Expo 24, sharing the message about Oklahoma's potential possibilities as the MRO capital of the world. They wanted to thank their special partnerships with DCOMP, Qualified Coatings, and of course us, the Department of Aerospace and Aeronautics. I do want to tell you that we have made great strides at these events with Helicopter Association International, and just in 2024 they announced that they have become Vertical Aviation International, and I know that many times that we talk, Commissioner Hunter, about what is the return on our investment. So at this show 2 years ago, we met a young couple. She was a Marine pilot, and so we've been fostering that relationship. And that young couple, we saw them again last year at HAI, which is now VAI, and they just announced last month that they are starting a rotor school at the University of Oklahoma. That's a win from the Oklahoma Department of Aerospace and Aeronautics. Yes. So I just wanted to say that, yes, those connections are being made there, and it's very important, and we appreciate your support. Next slide, Caitlin. MRO Americas was held And partnerships included AeroCore X, Avtrac UK Limited, Composites, and Mint Turbines. The Ardmore Development Authority was with us there, and Enid Regional Development Alliance, Greater Oklahoma City Chamber, the Oklahoma Department of Aerospace and Aeronautics, of course, was there, Tulsa Airport Improvement Trust, Tulsa's Future, OKC Airports. Next slide, Caitlin. There you can see the Oklahoma booth. They do an incredible job at the Oklahoma Department of Commerce building out our booths. And so I just wanted to feature this. And you can see in these little kiosks, those are all Oklahoma companies that are partnering with Commerce. So it's, again, very important. Next slide, Ms. Wade. And there you can see the Oklahoma booth again. This is at AUVSI, and Jace and Doug attended this. And they announced, I'm going to see, a partnership with Drone Response at this trade show. So connections are being made. Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma was a partner, Vista Innovation Park, Tulsa Innovation Labs, and the Oklahoma Aerospace Institute for Research and Education. And I would yield for any questions.
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Item number 20, Jace, you're recognized, sir.
Chairman Ortega, Commissioners. So I'll continue our briefing on our conferences. So we'll take place in Shangri-La Resort at Grand Lake, northeastern Oklahoma, for the 2024 OAA Oklahoma Airport Operators Association Conference. This was another successful conference as ODAA had the opportunity to reconnect with airport managers and industry partners across the state. I also want to take this moment to thank the OA committee and all those responsible for putting this event together, as I know it wasn't an easy task, and thank you for all your hard work. I also want to take some time to congratulate a few awards given at this conference. For Airport of the Year, Dan from Ardmore Municipal Airport. Airport Manager of the Year, Lisa Jewett from Grove Municipal Airport. And our very own Chris Wadsworth for OAOA President's Award of the Year. So take a second to congratulate those. We then hit the road, me and Nick, to head to Nashville, Tennessee for this year's Association of Airport Executives AAAE National Conference. This was another incredible opportunity for me and Nick to gain knowledge on industry practices and hear updates from industry leaders on various issues regarding FAA Reauthorization Act, airport policies and rates, leases, and unleaded aviation fuel and how it will be integrated into general aviation. I also want to touch on a couple of the keynote speakers from that conference. Sally Jenkins, ESPN, world-famous journalist, and these aren't aviation people, so. As well as Magic Johnson, as they shared their insights on leadership and maneuvering through high-stress scenarios where decision-making is critical. It's basically what we do on a daily, so that was a great experience. This conference also served for a chance to hear from other state departments and share what we are doing as a state, as we gain a lot of attention when it comes to aviation education. I tell them they need to find a Paula for one, but that is tough to do. So, but I try to offer any insight we have, and a lot of states are noticing what we're doing aviation-wise or are very interested, so a lot of great talks there. We then end the journey of our conferences with me and Nick attending the South Central chapter of American Association of Airport Executives in Wichita, Kansas. Director Arties also accompanied us on that trip for a day as he spoke for the State of the State panel, which included Kansas State Director, Texas, New Mexico, and they all took a few moments sharing updates on general aviation, aviation education, and advanced air mobility within their states. Nick and I spent the rest of the event discussing conversations regarding various GA challenges, continuing on airport funding, fuel prices, hangar leases, and my favorite, community engagement, which I think we handled pretty well with aviation education. And I would be wrong if I forgot this, but at the conference as well, our Lance Lampkin at Max Westheimer Airport in Norman was awarded the General Aviation Professional of the Year. So if you see Lance, congratulate him. That's a plus on the year. He didn't get the wiffle ball win from OAOA, so hopefully it'll make him happy. But I'll stand for any questions. That's it.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. Jace,
Thank you.
appreciate it very much. Chris, you keep hanging around Ben, and those things, those acknowledgments will just keep going up. So, Okay, item number 21, Caitlin.
Good morning, Commissioners. So, as you can see, we've had a very busy spring, spreading peace, love, and aviation. And so I just want to brief you on the couple of groundbreakings that we've had the past few weeks. I just first off want to say thank you. And so, coming from a non-aviation background, I just want to thank you, Commissioners, for your support in these airport projects. Just being able to see these communities come together for these groundbreakings, you really get to see the impact of these projects on the communities and just what they mean to that community and everything that it's going to bring. So I will start off with Will Rogers World Airport. We had a 3-bay hangar for AAR. Next slide. There we go. So as you can see, we had a pretty big turnout for that one. And so, like I said, it just shows, that community coming together, everyone excited for that new development. We've been able to have a pretty big legislative presence at these events, and so we are super thankful for that. These communities are always really appreciative when those legislators show up and just super excited to see that they made the time to come out. Next, we have a very busy day. We started out in Pryor, the Mid-America Industrial Park. So coming from a commerce background, being able to see this industrial park really take off the past few years and now being able to get a terminal, it's really just going to expedite everything that's been happening in there, and so that's really exciting. And then next, me and Sandra took off to Miami. Being able to see that community come together was really exciting for their new terminal. And then lastly, we had Elk City. So this one I was a little worried about. It was a little dreary day, not the best flying day, but Commissioner Putnam was able to make it out and celebrate with us. And I wasn't sure how many people we were going to have, but we ended up having about 60 people. So for Elk City, I counted that as a win. So I'll stand for any questions, and just thank you again for your support.
Any questions? Any questions, comments? Seeing none, thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Good job, Caitlin.
Item number 22, Sandra, Aerospace Week and Aero Day overview.
Okay, Commissioners, Caitlin, will you forward that slide? So you might remember, Commissioners, that you approved a partnership with the Oklahoma City Innovation District for Aerospace Week. So this is just an update on those events. Next slide, Caitlin. So Director Arties, that is Carly from the Innovation District, and Director Arties did an interview on the porch from Channel 9. And next slide, Caitlin. So this is a tour that they conducted at Boeing, and then on Tuesday, so that was on Monday. On Tuesday, they had the Oklahoma Innovation District Innovative Aero Symposium, and we were a sponsor of that as well. And then, of course, Aero Day at the Capitol was Wednesday, and on Thursday they held a tech talk through the ACES with the ACES program, and of course our sponsorship there, and that was for Firehawk and Wilder Systems. And then they had Take Flight in Scissortail Park on that Saturday for the Wind and Kite Festival. Next slide, Caitlin. Perfect. This is Aero, Oklahoma. This year we had a great year. We had about 1,000 people there. And so these are some photographs from that event. We had a lot of legislators. American Airlines was our presenting partner, and they really assisted us this year and helped us with some airline miles to bring in aviation celebrities. Next slide. During Aero Week, we also lost General Tom Stafford, and so this painting here is by the artist Chris Nick, and it was dedicated in the House of Representatives when I worked for the Senate, and I happened to work on art in the Capitol for a private foundation. And so they did a great job. The Oklahoma Arts Council did a great job of setting up the General Stafford display. And so this was actually displayed all of Aero Week and was there on Aero Day as well. Next slide. This is the ACES symposium that they had their briefing that morning in room 100 of the state capitol. And I do want to say something to the Capitol staff. The Capitol staff at the state capitol just does an incredible job. There's a young lady named Adrienne Stroud who schedules all these groups. They have square dancing, they have Ag Day, they have all kinds of stuff. Aero Day is the largest, I think, of course, I don't know. Director Artie's, do you agree? That's probably, okay. So it's just a lot. It's a lot of moving parts. It takes all of our staff. It takes every person here, sitting here, to come and help us with this. We had Tanya, we had Clarissa, we had Jace, we had everybody there. It was all the staff on deck, and it's just all these moving parts. And Paula and her team took the students over to the History Center, and they were spoke to by Commander John Harrington, and they got to tour, and we want to thank our partners at the Oklahoma History Center. They let all those students come for free into the museum, and they sat and ate their lunch there. And so we just really want to thank our partners. And Pratt Whitney was a partner with us, and so we really want to thank our partners. Next slide, Kate. So we had over 200 military personnel there from 5 military installations, and that is Senator Howard from Altus visiting with some of the Altus Airmen and Representative Kendricks. Next slide. And Caitlin, if you'll hit play on this. This is just a small video that we put together that kind of summarizes. And I will yield for any questions. Now, we're a little tight on time, so I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions, comments? Nothing? Seeing none? You are recognized for item number 23.
This is my favorite time of year. It's flying season, and that's what I really like to get out and see. So I know that at Sundance, they had the EAA breakfast on Saturday, and they also had a breakfast over at Watonga Airport. This Saturday, June 1st, Wings, Wheels, and Wishes is happening at Chickasha Airport. The Oklahoma State Air and Space Forces Association is holding their statewide award ceremony in Enid. Napa Nights is happening Saturday evening at South Grand Lake Regional. There is a barbecue and cornhole tournament at Cushing. And so that's just this weekend. There's many, many opportunities to go flying this weekend and to get out to some of our airport communities. On June 8th is D-Day at Tinker Air Force Base that we talked about, and we will be there. If anyone wants to attend that with me and Caitlin, we certainly welcome you to join us. And then on June 8th, the EAA International Young Eagles Day will be at Gordon Coop Technology Center. So if anybody would like to go out there and support them, there's also a Spartan Demo Day at Tulsa Flight Facility. And there are so many things coming up. If you have an event and you'd like to submit it to myself or to Caitlin, you can certainly email us. And we look forward to the flying season and getting out there and visiting our airports. I'll yield for any questions.
Any questions? Okay, thank you, Sandra.
Thank you.
Super job, Sandra.
Item number 24, Director Arties, for a brief director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We will make it brief. But before I get started, I do want to give a shout out to Jace and Caitlin for successfully achieving their first agenda item presentation here in the commission. So let's give them a little clap
job.
here. If I would have been smart, I would have been texting you all some hard questions before those items came up, but I wasn't thinking. Next time, we'll get it next time. So item A, Caitlin, if you don't mind going to the picture on the next slide. Item A is associated with the right picture. That's myself and Paula and Caitlin and Leisha from Invents from the ACES group. They're at Flight Safety International in Broken Arrow. I got to experience their simulators. Got to crash some airplanes. I'm not going to name names, but I didn't fly anything too crazy other than a helicopter, and I didn't even try landing it, so I can't say that I crashed it. But great trip to Flight Safety, a great aerospace company in Oklahoma. Followed that up on March 26th with the 59th Legislative Aero Caucus meeting, probably one of the best Aero Caucuses we've had. 40, mid-40s, I think, is what we had on our legislator count for that event. We had someone from the Army National Guard talking about how they're planning on using Camp Gruber for UAS training and how they want to become a kind of a UAS clearing center for National Guard training out there at Camp Gruber, so that was exciting. Item C, I had the pleasure of speaking at the Chickasha Rotary Lunch. That's the picture on the left there. Talking to Chickasha, as you heard Sandra mention, they have a great little air show fly-in that's coming up, and they do some pretty amazing things. And they're growing quite big. It's not that far of a trip from the southwest sides of Oklahoma City down to Chickasha, only about a 30-minute drive. So certainly a lot of people that are looking to grow that way. Aviation is hangar space is needed. And then last but not least, I've been selected to join the mayor's Tulsa UAS and AAM Blue Ribbon Commission. And I had the pleasure of going to their inaugural meeting on April 22nd and had plans to go on May 22nd. Unfortunately, they had to stay back at the Capitol, and Doug Wood went to that meeting for me. But they're planning to have a meeting every month between now and the mayor's end of his term, so that they can come up with a list of recommendations for how Tulsa should implement UAS and AAM for the community to better lay the foundation for the next mayor who's moving into office. So that is my brief director's report. You've heard some of the other things that I've been doing over the last couple of months from the other staff, but happy to answer any questions from commissioners.
Any questions? Any comments on the brief report? Nothing? Very good. Moving on. Director Arties, do you have any concluding remarks regarding any agenda items?
I just want to say thank you, commissioners. It's always a pleasure to do this and serve the aviation aerospace community. I know the decisions we make are not easy, particularly as it relates to the Texoma item. And I'm certainly happy to visit with each and every one of you, whether here in public or offline, to talk about the logic and some of the questions you may have. But it's our fiduciary responsibility to be responsible benefactors for the aviation taxes and fees that we get. And yeah, happy to see the success of our legislative session, happy to see the success of our airport construction program, and happy that all of the staff is becoming involved, because the more they present, the less I have to speak, and I'll take that any day of the week. So thank you all for the opportunity to serve you and serve aviation aerospace.
Okay. Any comments, commissioners? Anyone? Very good. Item number 26. The next meeting will be at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, July 10th, 2024, here in the first floor conference room at the Oklahoma Department of Transportation. Item number 27, any new business? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.